This training will give you an overview into how the on-air workflow in PhoneBOX 4 works. What I suggest you do is watch this video through because it will show you how all the elements fit together quite quickly. Then have a look at the more in-depth video for the part of the workflow that is your job, and then come back and watch this again, and hopefully it will all make sense when you put it together. There are various ways of adapting this workflow, but for the purpose of this video, I'm going to assume you're at a radio station where your presenter is in a studio and is being told what to do and has a running order of some sort in front of them that you want them to follow. That there's a producer who is in a cubicle somewhere who is organising which phone calls and texts and social media they want the presenter to see. And perhaps you even have a separate person, maybe in a different part of the building, who is answering calls and being the call handler. So this demonstration assumes that there are 3 jobs involved, but it also works if the producer is also answering phone calls and choosing who to call as well. The on-air workflow allows you to build a little running order out of your phone calls. So I'm starting off by showing you what your presenter will see. They've got a list of phone calls and texts and other information on this side, and over here up nice and big are details about the call which is highlighted, which is usually the call at the top. So they can very easily see that you as the producer would like them to go to Phil and then to Stuart and then read out a text, then have another phone call, read out a tweet, read out a message, and then eventually we're going to go to travel. As they go through, depending on whether or not they're allowed to press any buttons in the studio, either you as the producer on your screen or they as the presenter can simply remove a call when they've finished with it, like so. And you'll notice that down the bottom we haven't hung up that call at all. This is just a way of getting the information out of their way because they have dealt with it and they've moved on to the next call. So this is what you'll see if you're the producer. We'll go back into our 3-column view that we use quite a lot for production staff, and you'll see that this middle section here is exactly the same as what the presenter was seeing on their screen. If you don't believe me, so this is what the presenter's seeing, and that's just the same as the middle column in the 3-column view. We'll go into more detail about how to build this running order in a separate video, but I will show you very quickly in this training as well. And then this is what the call screener is going to see if you are working somewhere where call screeners answer the calls somewhere else in the building. So now you know what we're aiming for, I'll show you how we got there. So I'll clear everything out of here and we'll start from the beginning as though we haven't had any of these people phoning us in. So before your program starts, if you've got more than one topic on the show, you need to have a chat as a production team so that you can set some tags. If your program has only got one thing people are phoning in about today, you don't need to do this. But if maybe you've got a program with more than one idea, then the producer will go to the tags menu, which is in the call log here, and you can set your tags for the day. So we've got chocolate, elections and kittens is our exciting topic on the show. If you want to add or remove anything, you can add your topic here. And if you want to clear them, you just clear them like this. In addition, if there was a question that I wanted to get my call handler to ask everybody in addition to the usual call topic, I'd click the questions button and I could set up a special question that they might need to ask everyone. So for example, are you standing in the election is a common one that you might need to ask at certain times of year. If you don't need to do this, just leave it clear because there's no point in giving people more work to do than they actually need. So before the show starts, The producer is going to set some tags if they need to, and set any additional questions if they need to. Then what's going to happen is we're now going to pretend that we're being the call handlers and we're answering the calls. So this is the screen that the call screeners see if you've got people whose job it is purely to answer the calls and take details down, and they're not making a huge amount of editorial decision and they don't need to put anyone through to the studio. You'll notice that I haven't got the option to connect any calls down the bottom. When I first open this up, I'm going to have a blank screen here, but as soon as I start answering the phone, I'm going to see a lot of information about the calls all in one place. So let's say I'm going to answer this call, and I'm just going to start from the top, fill in someone's name, where they're calling from, their phone number, if there's a second phone number. If I have an additional question I need to ask them, I can put in the information here. I'm going to type in their call point, and then I can rate my caller. So if they're a really good caller, I'll give them 5 stars, like a really good film. And if they're a bit average, I can give them 3 stars. And if they're a bit rubbish, I can give them 1 star. And if I want to, I can mark off their gender, and then I can mark about what they're calling in about, which section of the programme. So I can use that tag here, and then if they're any good for the show, I'm going to mark them as flagged so that I know that they're good to use later on. So I'll show you that again. Answer the call, fill in the call details. These are some callers that I've prepared earlier. Work out if they're any good, and then I can tag them up, and then if I want to use them on the programme, I can mark them as being flagged. If they're just phoning in with something random, like they want a photograph of the presenter and you don't think they're going to be any use for your producer to see, you just mark them as rejected at this point. So that's what the call handler's doing. They're answering the calls and they're tagging people as they go about which topic they are phoning in about, so that the producer is starting to get an idea of what's useful on the show. So now if we pretend that we're the producer again, this is us in our cubicle. The producer can now have a look in their call log and they can see all the calls that have been flagged up. So here are some potential people that they might want to call back. And if they do want to call them back, they can just click on the person's name, press call, and that will dial the number. Now, because this is a fake system that I use for training, I haven't got any phone lines attached, so if I try and press call, it tells me I've got an error. But on your system, you'll be able to call people back from here. One really cool thing you can do is when you're choosing who to call back, you're going to have the all queue, which has got everybody who's phoned in and phoned out of your programme, whether they were any good or not. And then you can come here to this flagged list, and if you press the flag button, it'll just show the calls that your call handlers have decided might be useful for you to see. Now, if you can imagine on a really busy programme, you won't just have 2 people in here, hopefully you'll have 10, 20, 30 different people to choose from. So these are all the people you can see that are any good, and you can sort them even more than this. So for example, you could decide that you just want to see the callers that are in the section of the programme that's about elections. So you can go to the tag here and choose to just see the elections callers. Alternatively, if you're not using tags, or even if you are, you can choose to sort the list in a different order. So maybe you want to see the best callers at the top. So if we sort this by rating, we'll have our 5-star callers at the top, and then we can make sure that we're prioritising calling back the people that we think are really good for our show, rather than the ones that are a little bit more average. If you want to get into this list, you simply click the flagged button. So I've skipped forward in time a little bit, and I've pretended that I've called back 3 people and I've thought they're good enough to go on air, so I've connected them through to the studio. But how do I tell my presenter which order I'd like those people to be used in? Because maybe the presenter thinks I want to go to Stuart and then Dr. Foster and then Phil, but actually I want my presenter to go to Dr. Foster and then Stuart and then Phil. So all I have to do is I've connected them down here, so that means that they're all hooked up and they're ready to go through the sound desk, and that's not going to be a problem. They can be used on air. Now what I can do is go over to my lines and simply drag into here the order that I would like my presenter to use the calls in. So I can do it like this. If I want to reorder anything, then I simply click on this square here, and again, if I've got a touch screen, I can do this with my finger. And if I've made a mistake, I can just highlight the person that I don't want and click remove. And you'll notice I haven't hung up Phil, he's still connected through there. I've just removed the information from the on-air queue. So this is a really nice way of sending things through to your presenter, making it very clear to them what's going on, because they just need to look at their on-air queue on their screen. So let's put Phil back in. If I want to, I can also add in social media messages. So I'm just going to put one of those in there for a demonstration, and I can write my own messages too. Now I'm going to go through all of this in much slower detail in a separate training. It's just to show you how it all fits together at the moment. So this is me with my running order as the producer, and now we're back again being the presenter. So I can see very clearly that I need to go to Dr. Foster, then to Stuart Little, and then Phil from Crufts. Now once as the presenter I've finished with this caller, if I have access to the machine in the studio, I can simply click on this person's name and click remove so that I've got the information about Stuart's call up nice and big. Or if you're in a setup where your presenter hasn't got access to the computer in the studio and they're just looking at the screen, don't forget that whatever happens in the 3-column view in that middle section affects what the presenter can see on air. So if as the producer I'm kind of running the show entirely and I just put the information in for the presenter, if I want, when we finish with this call, I can be the person who clicks remove. So now it's out of the way of the presenter, but I still have the option to drag that caller back to the handset so that I can say, thank you very much, Stuart, you were great, definitely call us again, before hanging them up. So that's how the 3 elements fit together. You set the tags if you're using them before the show begins. Then your call handlers are tagging things as they go along. The producer can then see which calls might be useful for the show, and they can also sort by tags. So depending on which part of the program they're in, you might decide to only look at a certain part of the call log so that you can just see the people who are phoning you about kittens, or just see the people who are phoning you about the election segment of your program. The producer can then choose who to call back and then make a little running order out of the calls so that the presenter knows which order you want them to do what with. And it saves so many messages going backwards and forwards. It saves a lot of talkback time in the presenter's ear. It just makes it really clear for everybody, because you can all see which order the presenter is going to answer the phones in and talk to the people in. Now, of course, there's nothing I can do about your presenter ignoring your wise instruction and going in whatever order they want when they're actually on air, but that's the fundamental idea. We can use this middle section to build a little phone call running order, and then it just makes it easier for the presenter to know what you're intending when you're producing the show. So now I suggest you go and have a look at your particular part of the workflow in more detail. There are separate videos for that, and then come back to this one and watch it again, and hopefully it will all fit into place.